Welcome in, folks, to this week's episode of What's Bruin. I am your host, Chris Nozick, joined as always by my co-host, the one and only Dominic Tiano. As always, we are brought to you by the great folks over at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com. They are an incredible shaker bottle. You'll notice that you can actually probably hear the ice in mine, but it's silent. There's no clangy bottle in there or a little ball in there to break everything up, but it's odor-free. It's kitchen-grade stainless steel. They've sold over 1 million of them up. It's a great product. I can't stand behind it enough. And Dom, how are you this weekend?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
I am exhausted. It's been a long weekend for us. I've had some stuff to attend to this weekend that was a lot of physical labor. So I've missed a lot of hockey. So we'll have a lot to go over there. But last I knew, the sky was falling, and then we win a game on Saturday. I don't know if everything's patched back together, but we've already got some guys in the comments here. James is here. Matrix is here. Kevin, thank you for allowing us to draw you away from playoff football to talk some Bruins hockey. As Matrix says, haven't watched a single football game in about 5 years. Not quite that long for me, but this is the least amount of football I've watched in a long time, and loving every minute of the hockey that I'm watching instead. Dom, how has your week been?
Been good. Personally, hockey-wise, if you're a Bruins fan, not so good. Look, I'll just start out by saying this team is not as bad as most fans or a lot of fans make it out to be. I've stuck with it from the beginning. The power play is killing them. And that is the number one issue facing this team is the power play. If they get down by a goal, they have no confidence in themselves and being able to come back. They're a different team when they score first. I mean, it's obvious for the most part.
100% obvious.
No confidence in being able to come back when they're down a goal because, let's face it, to a man, they know the power play is not going to bail them out. It's not even going to get the momentum, and it sucks. And there was an incident in yesterday's game. Unfortunately, I got it from ESPN. For those of you that were watching on NESN probably missed it, which is why the majority of the media have missed it. And it came in overtime when the Bruins were about to go on the power play. We know Chris Kelly runs the power play. Or do we?
I got the
Yes,
picture ready to go when you want me to. On your
yeah,
cue, I will pull it up.
I'll tell you when to put it up. So Joe Sacco was talking to Pasternak in getting prepared for the power play. Chris Kelly reached across Sacco with his arm in front of him, talking to somebody else. Moved away. Sacco continued to talk. Kelly put his hand in front of Sacco again and put the picture up. Like I said, unfortunately, we're not allowed to show you the video, but you guys can look it up for yourself. At this point, it looked like Sacco. I mean, you could take it two ways. It was either accidental or Sacco pushed Kelly's hand out of the way. Clearly, we see two different coaches talking to two different players in preparation for a power play. So who's in charge? Who's running it? Is it Kelly or is it now Sacco? Or is this Sacco's way of saying, you know what? I've seen enough. We're going to do it my way.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that was the game they ended up going on to win in overtime.
Yes, that was yesterday's game.
So are things back because they beat the Panthers? I don't know, but I'm with you. This team hasn't been as bad. It's not as bad as the last 2 weeks would indicate. Everybody wants to act like the sky is falling because the Bruins were on a 7-game losing streak. Montreal was on a 6 or 7 game hot streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and Detroit's on a 6-game winning streak, and all these teams are catching up. But first of all, the Bruins have been treading water all year in the spot that they're in. These other teams have all gone through, basically they've waded through quicksand all year for a moment like this. Detroit, they are getting a new coach bump right now. Montreal has been fighting injury after injury. They get Patrick Laine back, and their power play goes through the roof. And they're getting a push from that new kid, Dobish, I believe his name is, in goal. So, they're going on hot streaks. They're doing great. Boston just feels like they're not doing great because they're not getting all the same results as they used to, but they're still right there. So
one thing I'm going to take issue with what you said. They did not beat Florida yesterday. Jeremy Swayman beat Florida.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But Jeremy Swayman is part of the Bruins team.
Well, now he is. If that's any indication that he's back to being Jeremy Swayman, then yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even Kevin says that they should not have won that game. They should have lost to the Panthers. That game wasn't one to put hope into. I'm not saying I'm putting hope into it, Kevin. I'm not. I'm just saying that this team isn't as bad as they've been over the last couple of weeks. Yes, the power play is anemic. It's the only way to describe it. I've been hearing this a lot as Matrix puts out there. Chris Kelly sucks as a coach. I don't know if I'd go that far. I would just say that because all of a sudden he forgot how to coach. Their power play has been great up until this year. And their penalty kill has been great. So, everything he's had a hand in has been great up until this year. So, I don't know if he's just all of a sudden forgotten how to coach, but I wonder, to your point, Dom, what's the leadership and the cohesiveness in that coaching room look like right now? That's the question.
Don't know. Don't have a clue.
And Kevin points out there's no leadership amongst the players, and there looks like there's no leadership within the coaching staff. I think there's just a lot up in the air right now. And of course, losing perpetuates the problems. Winning solves everything.
I disagree with there's no leadership amongst the players.
I would disagree with that too. But I mean, there's definitely some stuff going on in the locker room overall that, I know it's not Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak fighting, regardless of what some people want to say out there.
Look, Brad Marchand came out and handled that situation masterfully. So
100%.
did David Pastrnak. Charlie McAvoy wasn't scheduled to speak with the media after that practice. When he heard about it, he made sure he went out to speak with the media about it. Can't tell me there's no leadership amongst the players.
Oh, I know. I just thought that one was funny. And then the reporter who had it, or the radio host who had it, I saw later tweeted out and doubled down on it, basically being like, "You don't come out against it so egregiously if it's not true." It's like, the fuck are you talking about? Have you not seen this team ever since Pasternak joined it? They love the guy. There is no rift between Pasternak and anyone on that team. Like, that's not what's causing the problems.
Yeah, that's anyway. We'll move on from that.
Let's see. Michael adds in, it was nice to see, and he was happy to see Wallstrom score. That rooting for him, absolutely. Kevin says that they're still missing the playoffs, and that's the hill he will die on. Which, I mean, maybe it remains to be seen. I heard all offseason that this team was a wild card finishing team. Now all of a sudden they're in a wild card spot instead of the third place spot in the division, and people are losing their goddamn minds. And then the same people, Tom, you'll like this one too. The same people who are complaining that this team has no future want to call up the kids who are not the future, but they want them to replace the guys that are currently there.
It is what it is.
Can you make that sense? Does this team have a future in Poitras, Merkulov, and Lysell, or does it not?
There's all I can tell you is there are changes coming, and changes may come as soon as sooner than you expect. That is my belief. It all began with, sorry, Kevin, putting Mark McLaughlin on waivers today. What does that mean?
Say, Jonathan asked, was McLaughlin hurt, or did he, because he didn't play much?
There are several reasons why they put him on waivers today. And if Chris allows me to speak, I will go through them all. One,
go right ahead, Tom.
If he clears, they don't necessarily have to put him down in Providence. They have 9 games or 30 days on the active roster to do so. This is getting ahead of the game. Okay. Number one, they only played 2 games this week. First one is Tuesday at home against Tampa. Next one is Saturday on the road in Ottawa. If he clears, they will put him down for a day. If Kostelic is not good to go, they bring him right back up on Tuesday and send him right back down on Wednesday to bank some cap space. That's number one. Number two, they sent him down, or will send him down, in order to call up one of the kids, be it Merkulov, Lysell, or Poitras. Number three, because they buy themselves a 30-day window, that means that Lindholm might be getting close to returning. They'll need to open up a roster spot to activate him. We know Lindholm is skating. Number four, there's a trade in the works. It's last on the list, but possible.
Yeah, and Court even mentioned McLaughlin can be claimed. I mean, he's the guy that, if you lose him to waivers, you're not going to cry over. But at the same time, you'd like to keep him as a solid depth piece for the bottom 6. So I agree. Changes are coming. I think people are just short on patience. They forget that it's such a long regular season. They want action taken right away. And, it's like you said, there's stuff that's going to be changing. Kevin says Lindholm would help a lot. Hampus returning. Kevin says, thankfully, the team isn't dead in the water. There are building blocks. They can rebound. But he still doesn't think it'll happen until after this year's completed. We will see. Let's see. Where was it? Big Bad Bruins Joe says, want to see kids up because the NHL team is terrible offensively. And then James had it. Unlike the beef Pedersen and Miller have in Vancouver. Yes, that beef seems to have legs to it and has been real for a while. Dom, You mentioned it. It's at the very bottom of the possibility board, a trade. Court, you did a great video. Go check them out. Bruins Die Hard on YouTube, breaking down the possibility of a Pettersson to Boston deal. I don't want to give it away, but Dom, what do you think of the rumors that we've heard between Boston and Vancouver talking there?
First of all, I have to say, isn't it funny how there's a reported rift between Pettersson and JT Miller, and all of a sudden, someone in the Bruins media creates one in Boston?
Mm-hmm. Oh, did I lose you, Dom?
No, I'm just, rumors are rumors until there's something substantial. I just avoid them. Is it possible the Bruins and Vancouver are talking? Yes, it's pretty much likely that they've had a conversation, maybe two, maybe three. But until something more definitive comes out, it's all speculation, and I don't understand the point in discussing speculation. Like, people say, well, who would you give up? I don't know. I don't know what Vancouver's looking for.
So this was something I did a little digging on it my own, and one thing that someone did tell me was that Sweeney was at it was the Laval Abbotsford game, and the two GMs, there was a bunch of GMs there, including Sweeney and the Vancouver GM, and this particular person overheard them talking about Pettersson, and specifically Matthew Poitras' name did come up, but it sounds like you said, it's just a matter of, okay, if we're looking to move him, what would you be looking for? Like, how's this Poitras kid? Looks pretty good in my eyes. You guys seem to be high. Like, it's just general managers having conversation about their guys, not, okay, this is a package that we're looking to try to package together. It's just, like you said, if you're looking to move Pettersson, what are you looking for in return? Well, we want some kind of young center to replace him. Okay, it sounds like we have someone who fits that bill. The kid's Poitras. You know what I mean? Like, but, I put a poll out there on Twitter, and 44% of people said they'd give up both Poitras and Lohrei to get Elias Pettersson. Now, that being said, no, Court, it wasn't in public. It was up in the box areas, so it wasn't a public conversation. That being said, as just looking at it, the money doesn't work fantastic. You're way overpaying to make it work, or Vancouver looks at it and goes, why do I want those pieces? So to me, they're not a great trade partner. It just doesn't seem to work. Michael says for Pettersson, it's a first, Poitras, maybe Lohrei and Lindholm. Which Lindholm? Because to make the money work, it's got to be Elias. But they're going to want Hampus because they want the defender. Like, it's just not, at a certain point, it becomes not worth it for either team. James says, I think that's the case with all 32 teams. Not all teammates love each other, just like with our jobs. We don't love all coworkers either. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's not true. I love all my coworkers.
Well, everybody loves you, Dom. That's why.
Go back to Mike's previous comment.
This one?
Yeah, because there's facts here we can actually discuss. No, the one before that.
Oh, the one about the scouting department?
Yeah. Michael, let me start out by saying, yeah, let's be honest. Okay? Let's be honest. Okay? Answer me truthfully. You don't read any of the stuff I write, do you?
Oh.
I'll wait for you to answer. If you dare to.
I don't think he does. I don't
No,
think he dares to.
I know he doesn't, because if he did, he will know I wrote a week's worth of articles going through Don Sweeney's draft history to prove his comment there wrong.
I remember that series. I do.
Well, there you go, Michael. Maybe you should start reading, because I proved you wrong in those articles I wrote 6 months ago.
Yeah, I remember when you did that series too. I mean, you and I have had conversations about his draft history. And Michael, join us tomorrow for the prospect show. Every Monday we do a prospect show that we go over all the prospects in the Bruins organization, the pros, the non-pros, and everybody in between. So if maybe you're just not up to speed on where some of them are in the development, what the targets are for some of them. So join us on Mondays and learn about it.
There's Court. He gets email notifications.
Yep.
So, Court, let me ask you, in those articles I wrote 6 months ago, did I disprove Michael's comment tonight?
Well, Michael, I mean, you're right here. He says the examples I look at Letourneau as an example. Why not take the best available at the time?
But Michael, my question to you is, how do you know he's not the best available? Like, upside has to come into the equation at some point.
Oh yeah, and it's going to take a little while to tap into his upside. But if you turn around and look at his numbers at BC this year, then you're negating completely the fact that he's jumped up 2 levels in the game of hockey.
Yeah, if he was in the USHL, putting up 1.5 points per game right now, you'd all be satisfied. Everybody in this chat room would be satisfied. But no,
Absolutely.
He skipped that level and went up a level, and now he's learning. Every coach, the whole entire coaching staff at BC is raving about how hard he earns or works at practice, is willing to learn, and how coachable he is.
He says, watch Green Tree, just shows how well he's developing. I've never even heard of this Green Tree thing.
I've watched Green Tree. He's an OHL guy. I've watched him before he entered the OHL. So I'm, again, one step ahead of you on this one.
Oh, he's talking about a player. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's the point of picking out this other player? Like, I just, that's not who they have. Like, are you saying, they should draft him? Or
like I said, upside has to come into the picture. Letourneau's upside is higher than Green Tree's. Doesn't mean he'll reach it. No, but at some point you have to swing for the home run. And that's what they did.
Kevin says they took Lysell, who was best available at the time, and people are still complaining. Can't please everyone. 100%. Let's see. Joey says Pettersson is for 73 and 51 is likely the kind of return Vancouver's looking for, not realistic. So that's I wouldn't even want to do that. Court says, now I will add that the Bruins sometimes pick bottom 6 players too high in the draft. Those players make great NHL players, but picking them a little too high for sure. But then Michael says, I just think if you are drafting, you should always take the best player available in your position. Again, best available with the highest upside. Like there's another debate there. So James says, would it be smart for Letourneau to go to the CHL since he was drafted, or stay in the NCAA? Well, he's in the NCAA. He can't go back.
Yes, he can.
Oh, he can?
He can.
I mean, I'd rather him stay in college.
Because the rules change. He can go to the CHL and go back to the NCAA. But here's the thing that most fans don't understand. Who owns Dean Letourneau's OHL rights? I know the answer. Do you know, Chris?
Offhand, no.
Do you, Michael?
I know how to find out, though.
Just ask me.
Well, that's the way I confirm it. Yes.
The Owen Sound attack. Would I want Dean Letourneau going to the Owen Sound attack for the remainder of the season? No, I wouldn't. No, you're wrong, Michael. It's the Owen Sound attack. It's not the Barrie Colts. Would I want him going there? No, I don't want him finishing the year in Owen Sound. If he went to the USHL, yeah, I'd be all for that. Absolutely all for it. The situation that they're walking into plays a role. Why do you think the Bruins were happy and content with having Loke Johansson go to the Moncton Wildcats in the JHL?
He's in a great position over there. We've had a conversation with Craig Eagles. Yeah, and he's doing great over there. So Bruin Joe says, how do they know their bottom six guys? Some of it is what you project them out to be. It's sometimes it's the type of players. It's all based on projections, to be honest with you. I like David's comment here, though. Between 2015 and 2025, Bruins have the best record by any other team. Management is doing something right. Even with the low draft positions that they've been in with their first overall picks in drafts, like they're not going to have blue chip prospects, Michael. That's I think what you're trying to compare some of these people to. No, they're not getting a Connor McDavid or a Leon Draisaitl or Cale Makar or Mikko Rantanen. They're not drafting high enough to get those guys. So you have to pick someone with the upside to become something like that, someone like a Dean Letourneau, and have a multi-year development plan for them.
Look, let me also add this, and I'll use the Athletics model over my own because the Athletic used a more difficult or a harder to achieve model than I did. So the Athletic used, among other things, 200 NHL games played for success. Who has been, or where do the Bruins rank in successful NHL drafts since 2007? So since 2007, that includes the 2015 draft.
Yeah,
they rank fourth best drafting team.
And let's be honest, 07 through I would say 07, 08, 09, there were some struggles in there. Mm-hmm. There were definitely a lot more struggles in there well before 2015. Like, the one that hit the best was 2014 probably, because that had Pasternak, Ryan Donato, Danton Heinen, and Anders Bjork, all of whom have played well over 200 games. And they made 5 picks, so 4 out of 5. But, I mean, we can run through the draft history all day long. It's just, this year, everybody said it's got to be a wild card, and it's going to be tough for them to compete, and all these things. And now that's what we're seeing, it's not good enough. This is what I was told we should be expecting. Michael wants to know if we think Beecher and Frederick were successful picks.
Frederick, absolutely, 100%.
So far, Beecher has been too.
Frederick's going on 5 years in the NHL as a full-timer?
He was drafted in 2016.
No, so he's more than that full-time in the NHL.
What did they consider his rookie season? I'll pull it up. Because he was drafted 2016. He played in 15 games in 2018, 19, then 2, and then 42 in 2020, 2021. And then
after that was the COVID year.
Yeah, and then 60, 79, 82, and 45 so far this year.
Uh,
I would call that successful. I
Yeah,
would say that's a hit. I don't know. I mean, is he a top 2 center in the league, a top 2 center on the team? No, but he's fitting a role for them. And now, is he playing up to his standards this season? No, but he's still in the National Hockey League. Now, Johnny Beecher at age 23, he's played 43 games this year, played 52 last year. Yeah, I'd say that's a success. Now, he's playing a different role. He's not meant to be a number 1, number 2 center. He's playing fourth line left wing. Do I wish they didn't use the pick? The what was he? He was a first round pick, 20 something, 30th overall. So yeah, it was a little high, but doesn't mean it was a failure. Beecher, I believe, does Beecher have options to go down? I think so. I think he lost the
There's nobody on the roster that doesn't need waivers.
Nobody. Say, he lost it earlier this year.
So did Lowry. There is nobody on the roster.
Yep. He and Lowry were the only two that I had thought of, and then I realized that they lost him earlier this year. So I agree, Michael. They can't trade their first this year. I wouldn't look to. This isn't a team worth investing trading your first round pick in.
No, they'd be stupid to.
Yeah.
Unless they brought in a bona fide top 6 scorer that's young and under control.
Yeah. Well, Mike, that's what we're here for every Sunday, every Monday. That's what we're here for. So pop in any and every time. Sometimes we do shows on Thursdays or Fridays too, depending on the schedule. So subscribe to us on YouTube, get the little notification there, and you'll know every time we come on here. And then you can bring all your questions. So with that, though, would you say that the world is still falling apart because they finally got a win?
I can't say that I was happy with the way they won.
No, but
I'm not even close to happy. I mean, you could look at the whole streak. What is it? 1 point in 6 games?
Something like that.
There were games they lost outright that they played much better than they did yesterday against Florida.
Yeah.
But I will say it's about time Swayman stole them a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say that he hasn't been trying, I would say. He's had some pretty good performances in his last number of starts, but it's, as Johnny said, sloppy hockey on most nights.
I actually tweeted out before the game. I kind of expected Swayman was going to have a huge game, based on the fact that it was Florida, with the caveat or the question of, will it be enough, though?
Yeah.
And turned out to be enough. He's the only reason they won that game. The only reason.
Right. What does it tell you that so far his save percentage is just shy of 900 of a 900 save percentage, or 90% save percentage, and his goals against average is just shy of under 3?
Tells me he's not had a good season.
He's not had a good season, but he had a really bad start. Mm-hmm. And overall, the team in front of him is giving up way more opportunities than they normally do, because he's still saving almost 90% of them. And normally when he's saving 90%, his career save percentage of 914 boasts a goals against average of just about 2.5. So both numbers are going the wrong direction by just a little bit, even despite horrendous sloppy play on the ice in front of him. So
Stevie's comment there is a good one.
About Lindholm being healthy again?
Now, I will say this. two areas that he could potentially help the Bruins. One is the PK, and two is the PP. He would be my first choice to throw out there as the PP quarterback on unit number one, and I'll tell you why. I don't have to. I was funny because before we came on, I was talking to Court about this very subject. I haven't looked up the stats. I don't know what the stats are or anything, but the eye test tells me that the only guy on the roster right now that gets clean, smooth zone entries on the power play is Pavel Zacha. He's the cleanest of the bunch. He's the smoothest of the bunch. And then Court told me, he says, Lindholm could fix that. And right away, I think about his power play time in Boston. And yeah, he's the other guy.
Yeah. Real quick, Tyler says that Sway and Korpisalo's save percentage are respectable at 918 and 912 at 5-on-5, but it's the PK that they're both horrible. Tyler, if you have those numbers, you would save me an assload of time trying to find them. If you could post them on the chat here, I'd love to post them up here, because the PK and the power play, two dreadful spots that are crushing everybody who, like, the goaltending numbers, the defensive numbers, and it was McLaughlin who got sent down, but right now you have 7 defensemen waiting to get Hampus back. So I'm sorry, but I don't know what Hampus Lindholm is going to look like when he first gets back. I don't want to risk putting even Osterley on waivers until I know Hampus Lindholm is 100% healthy. Yes, he did start skating a couple days ago. I don't know if we have a timetable on his return, but I'm not sure that he would be skating if he wasn't somewhat close to working on getting back into hockey shape to get back on the ice.
Court thinks early February, which would put it at 3 weeks away.
Yeah, and so over the
at that point, you just stay out and get the extra break from the Four Nations.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, because he can use that term to continue to get back in shape, to train and be ready for when the Four Nations comes back, or from that break. I think between now and then, let's assume that timeline is let's say that's correct. I would be okay with getting some run for the Lysels, the Merkulovs, and Potchers of the world up and down a little bit.
So here's a good point, and I'd like to expand on that. Not only will Hampus shoot from the point, Mason Lohrei will too, and to a lesser extent than Lindholm does. But Lindholm shoots with a purpose. And Lindholm shoots for deflections. He does shot passes. He shoots for rebounds. And one thing I've spoken about here before is we see McAvoy make the same move, down the right wall, around the boards, and come out the other side and then lose control. Lindholm likes to go down the left wall, cut across, and take it to the net. There's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
And the fact that Lindholm will actually shoot the puck.
Yeah. I think having Hampus back too, I mean, look at the depth chart without him on the left side. Shad says, I'd be surprised if we see Lindholm before the Four Nations. I would be, but at the same time, if he's already skating again, it's not impossible. Again, it's just a matter of how quick does he get back into shape. I don't think they have him skating if the knee's not ready for use. So there's some promise there. I agree with you, Dom. If he's going to be back, with 2 games left, let him sit out those 2 games and keep it going. But at the same time, again, with that depth chart on the left side, you got Zadorov, Lohrei, and Osterley. Like, who are you? Like, your second penalty kill unit. I mean, your first one, even, you have Zadorov out there. That's the first guy you're putting out for a penalty kill on the left side. It just, or are you going to put Carlo on his offside and pair him with Mac? Like, it throws everything off.
Yeah, it's just that's one of the reasons why the PK sucks as bad as it does. Is that left side is very, very, very weak on the PK.
Yeah. And they're taking a lot of penalties. And if Zadorov is the one in the box, you're even more fucked. So it's
totally.
Remember a couple years ago when they were missing David Krejci for that 1 year, and we all kind of looked at it and said, if you can get David Krejci back and slot him down the middle, and he just kind of slots all your forwards right. And then he came back the following year, and oh my God, this is what happens when you have Coyle playing 3C, and you have that down the.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're looking at happen on the left side of the defense. It's exactly the same thing. I believe Michael is asking about Matthias Mantakivi, and no, they don't have his rights anymore. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So. Kevin says, I think a major positive you can take from that game. Kevin, is this the Florida game that you told me that we can't take any hope out of? Is that number 71 gave his best performance so far as a Bruin. Wahlstrom was working the boards, getting into the dirty areas, and it rewarded him.
I can agree with that.
But we can't take anything positive from the game, according to Kevin.
No. He didn't say you can't take anything positive. He said you can't base any hope off of that.
Well, what if the game means? What if what we saw from Wahlstrom means he's starting to figure out and fit in on the roster better, fit in on the lineup?
That's not hope. That's taking something positive out of it.
Okay,
there's a difference.
When you look at it in terms of they're not as bad as they've been playing the last few weeks, it's going to turn around at some point. It just is. And Pasta and Marshy played a few shifts together.
I love the Bruins media or Twitter account and the way they handled that whole Pasta Marchand situation. They did a masterful job in handling that.
Yeah, they handled it great.
Just a few subtle tweets, few subtle pictures.
Pasternak handled it great. I think Marchand came out and I mean, like you said, people say there's no leadership on this team, but I mean that's what he's supposed to. And for all you who want to come out and be like, oh, well, what do you expect him to say? Well, if there's something really going on, they don't come out that way. They don't come out in that kind of defiance where Marchand's calling for the guy to get fired or saying it's unfortunate he's still going to have to go to work tomorrow because he's making this shit up as he goes. Like, you don't swing that way back if there's some truth to it. That's why if you look at what's going on in Vancouver and you look at this crap in Boston, two completely different answers. And we know Pettersson and Miller haven't seen eye to eye, and that's fine. They got through it last year. It's a little more this year, but you're not seeing this kind of denial out of it, and that's telling. Chaz asks, do teams need to be completely off during the Four Nations?
Yes.
Anyone know when they can return to practice for the return of the season?
I believe it's the day before. Hold on. I should know this off the top of my head. I believe it's 2 days before their first scheduled game, and the day before is a travel day for teams that need to travel.
Okay. I'm seeing if I can find out real quick here, because the games go from the 12th to the 20th. I'm not seeing anything about the rules as far as practicing though. So like,
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
would Hampus Lindholm be able to go to Warrior and skate?
No. But I also believe the week before is the Bruins bye week, is it not?
Let's see. February 12th is when the Four Nations comes along. And let me pull up the Bruins schedule to see how that coincides. Let's see. David wants to know thoughts on Charlie Coyle's season so far. I mean,
Obviously, everybody's having a down year, and that includes Charlie Coyle. I think about the only person you can say that is playing up to or exceeding expectations are Mark Kastelik, and Justin Brazeau. That would be the two. Other than that, everybody's had a down year, and that includes Charlie Coyle.
yeah, I would agree with that. Those are the two. So the Bruins play on February 8th, and then they're off from the 9th all the way to the 22nd.
So they're after the four. No, is before the Four Nations.
Yes, because the Four Nations is the 12th. That's the Canada-Sweden game, and they play on the 8th. So they have the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th all off, and then the 13th is when that Four Nations tournament begins. Or sorry, the 12th is when that Four Nations tournament begins. And then they have 2 days off after the tournament. So the championship game is on February 20th, and they return to play 2 days later.
Okay, so once the tournament is over, the next day they can show up to practice, and then the day after that is a travel day if they
Correct.
need it.
They don't need it because the Ducks are coming to Boston.
Yeah.
But you know they're going to play on the they're going to practice on the 21st. And that's the one. Honestly, that would be the one. If I'm Hampus, I'm circling that. I return against my former team at home.
Yep.
So Bob says Geeky's been playing to expectations recently. Yeah, but with how he started the year, I really can't say he's having an average season for him.
To answer the question literally, it was on the season. So yes, he's been great probably the last dozen games, but the start sucked. So you to base the entire season, he's been under expectations.
I do like how he's settling in on that line with Zacha and Pasternak, though. You know, he's settled in to find some spots there. I was actually just pulling this one up too. Has anyone said how bad Kastelik is injured?
Day to day. Obviously, it's head injury. There's concussion protocols there. He did bang his head on the ice, so that's your number one concern. And we know how this team is when it comes to concussions.
Do you think they would have sent McLaughlin down though if Kastelik wasn't going to potentially be available for Tuesday?
Like I said, Chris, it's a move to get ahead of it.
True.
They don't have to send him down.
Yeah.
He's now cleared waivers. Now they don't have to do it for 30 days if he clears.
If he clears, yeah. Okay, so that's fair. And if for whatever reason he gets claimed, then they can always call someone up for Tuesday, so if they needed to. So yeah, that makes sense. Coyle's trajectory worse since joining the NHL. Again, players have down years. Where was it? It was back here. Johnny says Coyle's playing like he is comfortable. If that was the case, Johnny, why is he one of the ones who's coming out in front of the cameras day in and day out after the team plays a shitty game and says, we've got to be better? Why is he one of the ones leading the accountability in the locker room?
Somebody has to do
Uh,
it.
yeah, I guess. But Kevin says ever since our boy Brett Howard got under Kiki's skin, he showed up.
Yeah. And if I had $100 million to send to Brett for doing it, I would, but I don't.
No kidding. Michael says, I wonder if the Bruins offer an extension for Geeky.
I believe it's already been done.
You think so?
Didn't they say Sweeney say preseason he talked to Frederick Marchand and Geeky's camp?
Yeah, he said he talked to all the pending UFAs and
Yeah.
RFAs, I
Oh,
think. So my guess is, though, because he's an RFA with our Brights, I mean, it's not really
there's
a
no
deal that has
rush to
to.
get it done.
Yeah, it's not a
There's no
deal that's going to
rush.
get done during the season. Let's see. Y makes over 5 mil. I'm not sure who he's referring to here, David. If you
Coyle.
want to, okay, but I'm not sure the why what with Coyle. Shaz says Coyle shouldn't be on the wing. He's a much better at center. He played well on the wing next to Lindholm and Marchand, though. That line gelled quite well.
It did, but for the team to be successful, they need either a left winger on the top line and move Geeky there to right wing, or they need to keep Geeky on the top line and find a 2 right wing and move Coyle back to 3C. That makes the team better. They've tried everybody up in that spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If Boston adds Jason Zucker, could fit on the wing. I mean, a lot of teams would like a guy like Jason Zucker. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be available or going to be moved, and if Boston has the right price to pay for him. And
Kevin will know where I'm going with this if Kevin's still listening. But Ricard Raquel scored his 22nd goal of the season today.
I think I know where you're going with that too. Matrix says, I still think Wahlstrom should be given a chance on the second line right wing. What do you think about trying to play him there?
You know what? He's just now starting to prove he can play on the third line. So I'm not gifting anybody second line. I'm not. Prove to me you can play where you are, and then we'll consider you moving you up. Look, Brazil was given a shot there. Kepke was given a shot there. Geeky was given a shot there. Coyle was given a shot there.
Hell, wasn't Kastelik given a shot there?
Kastelik was given a shot there. They've tried everybody there, and so far Charlie Coyle is the only one that seems to have worked out. But ideally, that's not the best move for the team.
Yeah, Shaz says, I hope they bring Merkulov up and have him play on the wing with Coyle centering the third line and Wahlstrom on the right.
So what do you do? Where do you put Brazeau then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thought, Chaz, correct me if I'm wrong, is second line right wing, but
I don't want him back on second line right wing.
I was going to say that was not as good as Coyle right wing on that second line. Now, that being said, we're also not denying the fact that one of Merkulov, Coyle, or Lysell could be an answer to resolve the issues in this lineup. Because if you call one of them up and give them an opportunity, they absolutely could earn the job. But they have to show when they come back up that their game has evolved from the last time they were up. Now, when do we start to see them is the question. But I think to your point, the move with McLaughlin kind of shows that they're going to start rotating some of these guys in.
I think the best thing that could have happened to Georgi Merkulov and Fabian Lysell was to have Matthew Poitras sent down to Providence. And I'll tell you why. Because this is a kid that made it to the NHL as a 19-year-old. And he went down to Providence, and they saw the way he played and the way he worked. not just in games, but in practice and in the weight room, off the ice, all that stuff. And they thought, wow, if they can send this kid down and he works this hard, we're going to have to pick up our pace. And they have done just that.
They have. They've really responded, and Providence is benefiting from it. They're climbing up the East down there. Let's see. Johnny says Montreal and Detroit coming hard. It's time to figure it out or retool and collect some assets at the deadline. No, Johnny, that's a panic move. Look what happened with the New York Rangers. After they dealt off Trouba and they dealt off Kako, they haven't all of a sudden turned shit around. They continued on the decline, and they certainly did not get back anything worth a return for either of those guys that are going to be long-term benefits for that franchise. So you don't want to panic and make a bad move simply because things aren't going your way right now, and Montreal's on a heater and Detroit's on a heater. Like, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, are we better than Montreal? Are we better than Detroit? When both teams are playing their game, you are absolutely better than both of those teams. Okay, why are they so hot right now? Well, we talked about it before. They're on a hot streak. They got Patrick Laine back. Their power play finally has caught fire. They're riding a lot of momentum. It's gonna even off. Detroit, coaching change. All right? It's gonna even off. 6 straight. It's not. There's a reason why only the Boston Bruins team from 2 years ago got as many wins as they did, because that's not how you can play all year, all the time. It's just not.
I'm gonna tell you a story about when I coached. I won't tell you what level this was at. I'm a firm believer, as in most NHL coaches, that you don't worry about what other teams are doing. You only worry about yourself. And the fact is, the Bruins can't worry about what Detroit is doing and what Montreal is doing. Fix your own game, because you control your destiny in the end.
Yeah.
I was coaching a hockey game going into the third period, and we're down 7-1. And I went into the dressing room and I said to my players exactly what I just said here. I said, for the next 20 minutes, all I want from you is 15-second hard shifts. You go all out, balls to the wall for 15 seconds, and you come off. And that's what I did. Every 15 seconds, I threw another combination out there. They went balls to the walls for 15 seconds, right back off. And we tied the game. You worry about yourself. You don't worry about the opposition.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
Yep.
So, let's see. Kevin says, smart sell at the deadline so you can get something and do not fit in your future plans. No panic selling. That's just it. You want to avoid a panic move overall, whether it's a sell, whether it's a buy, any of that stuff. You don't want to panic. You've got to systematically go through. Kevin says that you coached Peways.
Kevin, I can tell you, Chris Taylor was on that team.
So, Karen, shout out Karen, an original viewer of the show, says, at this point, they need to do something because this team is just dropping, and I hate to see this team go under so bad. They can't get themselves out of the flame. Well, again, you don't want to panic. You want to make the right move. So do they have to do something? It starts with the waiving of McLaughlin. You know, you got to see what happens with him first before you make your next move. You're going to see what happens with Kostelic, if he can go, if he can't, all those types of things. So Big Bad Bruin Joe says the Habs will be in front of the Bees at the break. I'd have to look at Montreal's schedule. I'm not sure, but they're not going to ride an 8-2 record for the next 10 games 4 times in a row. They're just not.
Anything is possible. Like I said, they can't worry about what the other teams are doing. They need to fix their own game, and it all starts with the power play. If this power play was running at 20%, do you think this team would have the record that they have today? If their
No,
PK was running around 90%, do you think they'd have the record that they have today? Ideally, you want a combined PK of 115 to 120%. The Bruins are nowhere near close to that. Nowhere near close to that. They fix
not at
those
all.
two issues. Hampus Lindholm will fix one, the PK, and this team will be okay. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, as David says, something the Bruins need was set right off the top of the show. Power play needs to find a way. Absolutely. Absolutely. Johnny says, time is running out. Can't wait 3 weeks or a month. I mean, as long as you're at the point where you are in the playoff race, you're fine. It's not time is on your side at that point. You just have to maintain. So, yeah, as you said, the point is they need to fix what they're doing now. Fix it. Find a way to fix it. Panic moves don't fix things.
Yeah, I must throw an asterisk around that too. That along with fixing the PP and the PK, we've got to be certain that Jeremy Swayman is back, like he was yesterday against Florida.
Yeah, big part of the team. There's a reason why he got the contract. Now, I will say, and I know Court was one of the ones who threw this out there, some folks are saying to trade him before his trade protection comes into play. Is that a move that you'd look to explore? Or
No,
is this
his value right now is nowhere near where it should be.
I wouldn't again, in my opinion, that's the definition of a panic move.
No, that's a definition of okay, let's blow it up. So if you
Well,
trade
yeah.
Swayman, you might as well trade McAvoy, you might as well trade Pasternak, you might as well trade Marchand. This is trading Swayman would be an absolute let's tear it down and start from scratch, like Chicago has done, like Anaheim has done, like San Jose has done, Buffalo, you name it.
Let's become irrelevant for a decade while we try to rebuild through the draft, which, again, you don't want to blow this up if you think Don Sweeney can't draft.
No, because then there'll be those that say, and the next move is to fire Sweeney because he's not the one to lead the team through this, or that would be the first move. Complete teardowns and rebuilds aren't necessarily always the answer. I.e., look at Buffalo, Edmonton. When they drafted Connor McDavid, how long before they became relevant?
Oh God, that was a while. like he was solid right from the get, but it's just one of those things where they as a team weren't where they should have been.
They had to wait for him to completely mature. They had to wait for Draisaitl to completely mature. Chicago, how long is it going to take them? Well, Bedard's got to mature, and whoever else is coming up with him, he can't do it on his own.
Yeah, they've got a couple young pieces there that look pretty good, but yeah, they have to mature. And one thing that Sweeney has done, they've taken some of the players that they've drafted over the time, like Urho Vakanainen was a first-round pick. They turned him into Hampus Lindholm. And I'd call that a success. Regardless of how you feel about the Urho Vakanainen pick at whatever it was, 17, 18, or 20, whatever, they turned him into one of your defensive stalwarts right now. A guy who's proving how valuable he is when he's in the lineup by not being in the lineup. And yes, Jason, with Edmonton, it goes all the way back to Taylor Hall. 100%. Johnny asks, was 2015 a retool panic? Dom, I'll let you talk about your stories of the 2015.
2015, though, was not in season. It was an off-season retool.
and I wouldn't call it a panic. I would just say it was a few moves that didn't pan out the way that they thought they would.
They were this close to trading Tuukka Rask on the draft floor. That close.
I wish I knew what the return would have been for that.
And I can tell you that the Bruins panicked because of the flack they were getting with the Hamilton trade.
So they backed out of it.
Yeah. What was the other one? Lucic.
Yeah,
No.
Lucic.
Yeah, Lucic and Hamilton.
Yeah, because the Lucic trade got them Jones, who would have been the replacement for Tuukka.
Right, Johnny. They lost the playoffs on the last day, but it's to make moves like that, like you're talking about in 2015. Those are off-season moves. They're not in-season moves.
Right. To make panic moves, or the moves that you're referring to, Carl Soderberg out for a 6th rounder, that would be what? Your Charlie Coyle now?
No. A panic move that you're describing is a move they make now in season to try and save the season. That's not what 2015 was.
No, I agree with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying,
I think Johnny's definition of a panic move is different than what we're describing here.
Possibly, yeah, because if you look back at those trades, you were dealing away Soderberg, Hamilton, Lucic, trying to deal Tuukka Rask. You dealt away the Savard contract with Riley Smith. Like, there were a bunch of moves in that was just rebuilding your roster in a different way. And you walked out of there with 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 6th-round pick, plus Colin Miller, Martin Jones, Sean Corrali. Martin Jones, you later flipped.
Yeah, but let's forget 2015. 2015 was not panic moves. I think we agree on that, man, now.
Yeah.
We don't need the details of all the trades.
He says no at the deadline if we're out. Freddie, Geeky, or off-season. I think I agree with you, Dom. I think they're trying to re-sign Frederick at their number.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think Geeky is. I think the Kostelic deal was a message to both Geeky and Frederick that we're willing to pay for what you do, but you've got to do it. And right now, where they're not doing it, they're willing to wait.
Geeky is an RFA. There's no concern about Geeky. They don't have to sign him today. They don't have to sign him July 1st.
Right. Brazeau is an unrestricted free agent as well, right?
Yeah. Would I have any concern if Justin Brazeau got to free agency and signed with another team? No. Wouldn't concern me. Would I have concerns with Freddie? Yes, because of the 3, he should be the one that brings you the most back in a trade value.
Yeah.
And again, forget Geeky because he's an RFA. He's not going anywhere.
Right. Let's see. What do you think happens to Sweeney when the Bruins miss the playoffs this year? Also, who do you think they bring in to replace Sacco? So, first things first with the Sweeney conversation, Don Sweeney's not going to have the green light to have the discussions to talk about bringing in an Elias Pettersson or make any sort of significant trade deadline acquisition if he's not going to be here through the end of the year. It's just not going to happen. Now, does that mean he willingly on his own won't swing for the fences on a deal like that? I think he knows when to walk away. I really do. I don't think he's going to overpay for even an Elias Pettersson, but I just, there have been too many votes of confidence in this management group from ownership.
Yeah, it's, we'll have this conversation again if they miss the playoffs. I don't want to deal in hypotheticals.
Yeah. And then who do you think they bring in to replace Sacco? I mean, again, I think that might be tied to whether or not they make the playoffs.
And it might be tied to who the GM is going to be.
Yep. David asks a really good question, though. He says, Boston has always been a destination for players. Is this still the case? If so, why? If not, why not?
I still think it is. I still think that top to bottom, it's one of the best run organizations in the NHL, and the players know it. And despite the season they are having, that has not changed. That's my answer.
Yeah. Big Bad Bruin Joe says Sweeney clearly said that this team is not a complete team in October. We are January. Yeah, and he's been analyzing the team. He's been seeing what's out there. As GM of Canada for the Four Nations Face-Off, do you really think he has no idea who's out there and available for the trade market? I
And yes,
guarantee
it
you
is.
he knows.
Yes, it is January, and there's still 3 months.
Yeah, there's still 2 months before the trade deadline. Like, there's still plenty of time before the trade deadline. Bob wants to know, are there any potential 30-goal scorers in the pipeline? How far down the pipeline are we going is the question.
Oops, wrong mouse. Hold on.
I was going to say, I don't know if you want to just give a name or how you want to answer that one, but it's a good question.
Bob, do you mean in Providence right now, or do you mean prospects
the
like
entire
the
pipeline.
entire system? Because if we're talking Providence alone, oops, wrong mouse again. Sorry.
Don't worry, we don't have access to see that screen.
Oh, you can't see it.
I know you got like 9 computers set up there, so
I would say in Providence, no. There's no potential NHL 30-goal scorer there.
I would agree with that.
Prospects, I think Ryan Walsh could eventually be one.
Okay, so yeah, he was talking about the entire system.
I would say Ryan Walsh and Dean Letourneau.
I was thinking Letourneau has that upside to him. It's just going to take some time to get there.
It's a good question, though, that we could go into deeper tomorrow night's show, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
So remember that one.
Absolutely. Potential 30-goal scorers there. 20 goals in Providence, question mark. I'm not sure what the extent of the question is there. Maybe is there a 20-goal scorer down there?
Yeah. Lysell, Merkulov, Patra. They're all 20 goal potential. Excuse me.
Ottawa and Tampa Bay won tonight. Ottawa now only 4 points behind Boston with 3 less games played. Yes, but the games in hand have to be won first. So until they're won, it's not the games in hand don't matter. And a lot of times when you have to play catch up and catch up games played, you're playing more back-to-backs. So when you're playing more back-to-backs, like Tampa's a great example. They have, I think, 5 back-to-backs throughout the rest of the season. That's a lot. And they have 4 of them in the next month. Like this month, every weekend is a back-to-back for Tampa. It's a lot. And they still travel.
They have still played the fewest games within their own division, and along with Buffalo and I believe Detroit have the worst record in the division within the division.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, also added is it will be too late by the trade deadline. Not if you're within where you are right now. That's the thing. Is if you're able to maintain a couple points on the teams, you're still right there. As long as you're still right there and you haven't drifted all the way out, if you don't plummet the way that the Rangers plummeted, you're fine. You're still in it. You're playing the meaningful games. You're pushing for the playoffs. You bring someone in at the trade deadline. If you bring in the right person and you trade away the right player or asset to add to your roster, then you can go on a bit of a winning pattern and you get right back into the playoff position, even if you've fallen out of it. So Matrix says, are there any names out there that the Bruins could bring in on trade that's not named Pettersson or Miller? Give some names that you and Dom feel have interest in and could actually be beneficial to the team. I'm not sure Dom has a trade target board right now. Dom, do you have a couple names out there?
No. None that I can give.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't have any that I would immediately target, but there's some situations out there that are definitely worth keeping an eye on. And again, so many teams are still in it that you got to figure out who's actually going to be looking to sell at the deadline. You know, some people say Calgary is going to look to sell. They're in a playoff hunt. So why would they look to sell unless you're willing to pay a premium, premium piece? So there's really not a lot when you look at the standings right now where you can sit there and go definitive seller at the trade deadline. Like,
I just want to address this one really quick. Okay, Kevin, I understand what you're saying, but I would rather you said to me Ottawa and Tampa, or let's say Detroit, have now moved ahead of Boston in points percentage. That means a lot more to me than Ottawa's 3 points back with 3 games in hand.
yeah,
Because games in hand don't mean anything until they're played and won. They don't. But I will fully give into they passed Boston in points percentage. That's a legitimate, honest statement.
but it doesn't change the standings.
Yes, it does.
Well,
in
if the
terms
season
of,
ended,
in terms of many ways, it changes the standings. Absolutely, it does.
well, no, I'm saying it doesn't change it literally doesn't change them in the sense that Boston right now is still ahead of Columbus, who has a slightly better points percentage because they have one more point. That's also fact. So, Columbus goes out and loses the 2 games in hand. Boston is still ahead of them in points and now has the points percentage edge. So, Montreal has a .002 points percentage lead on Boston with 3 fewer games played. It's funny now that you make the argument or make the case. Now we're getting them coming in. Ottawa, Detroit, and Montreal have all passed Boston in point percentage.
But that's legitimate.
Yes.
That's legitimate. Because what happens now? What happens in an off chance there's another pandemic and the season ended today and they went to a bubble and we're basing the standings on point percentage because of difference in games played. We've seen it happen. What happens to waiver claims? What happens to, it affects all sorts of different things. Point percentage is a real legitimate argument. 3 points back with 3 games in hand is not.
You mentioned waiver claims. Is it points percentage that determines waiver claims, or is it actual points in the standing?
It's points percentage. You can't go by points in the standings because of games played.
Okay. That's why it's important right there. Because right now you are, well, actually, you're dead middle in the league. You are 16th in the league in point percentage. Or no, it didn't sort right. Sorry. No, yeah, you're 16th. Right behind Ottawa, right ahead of Utah Hockey Club. Is that 16th? Yeah. Trying to sort it on the NHL website, but you know how accurate that thing can be.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, control when Ottawa and Detroit also have the edge in right wing, which is a tiebreaker. Well, that's not really
Regulation
a tiebreaker.
wins.
Oh, regulation wins. Okay, I was like, what? Yeah.
For now, but they haven't played an equal number of games. That could change.
You could tell it's been a long weekend. I saw right wing out of that.
To worry about the tiebreaker at this point in the season, you have to worry about head to head, because the regulation wins column can change on any given night.
Yeah, and we worry about you guys. Everyone's worried about games played, but at the end of the day, everyone's looking to play 82 games, and no one has played 82 yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kevin, shut up. It's been a long weekend. I'm exhausted, and what I genuinely almost said to Dom, "Hey, I'm just not up for the show tonight because I haven't seen enough recently. My weekend was exhausting. So for me to take, I can at least laugh at myself on that one, Kevin. All right, shut up." Good question. Still early, but CBA expires 2026. What are your thoughts?
I have no worries about it. I think it'll get done. I think it'll get done early. I think we're going to see some new things that'll make both the owners and the players happy. I'm confident it's going to get done.
Speaking of the new things that you mentioned in the CBA, do you think we'll start to see some of the holes buttoned up and sewed up when it comes to deferred contracts? Old Bruins friend Frank Vetrano got a very, very long deferred portion of his salary in his last contract with Anaheim, which, of course, taking him off the trade board, I think, for a lot of people. Just thoughts on that kind of contract and whether or not you think the league is or the Players Association, because both sides got to agree on it, might try to tighten up some of those loose ends.
No, I don't think they will. I think the owners are fine with it because it still counts against the player's share of hockey-related revenues. So they should have no issue with it. As a matter of fact, Vetrano's contract will benefit the owners in 10 years when the salary cap is $110 million, because it counts towards that player's share of HRR and not this year's or next year's or the year after. The players should like it because it's guaranteed money. And if something, God forbid, would happen to them, their family will get it.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to see it tied up or tidied up and closed off, simply because and it doesn't count towards this year's salary cap for Anaheim, so that helps the team as they look to rebuild the way that it's deferred. I look at it in terms of this was a great way for a guy like Vetrano to stay in Anaheim, a team that's looking clearly to not spend a lot of cash all at once. And it just, for the middling players, the Frank Vetranos of the world who don't necessarily have, like Connor McDavid's going to be playing in the National Hockey League as long as he wants to. You know what I mean? He'll play for 20 some odd years and he'll make his money. And every time he signs a contract, like Austin Matthews did, he will get minimum salary, all signing bonus. That's how they get paid.
Chris, you're making it more complicated than it is. It'll help the teams like Anaheim, LA, San Jose, who play in an unfavorable tax system in California. Okay. By doing it the way they did it, Anaheim, a smaller money team, can defer money like this, spread it out over years. And for the player, it gets them out of California and they're getting paid when they're out of California and under a better tax system. It's a win-win for both.
Yeah. And I think it'll help the middle market players is where I was going with that.
Well, it'll help all players. Imagine Connor McDavid playing in California at $15 million a year. What's his contract going to look like?
Could probably easily get half of it deferred.
You know, it's got nothing to do with what status the player has. They've now figured out how it can be beneficial for both team and player. And that's why I don't think either the NHL or the PA are going to fight it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to. Ernie says, what do you guys think about 2 D-men on the power play to cut down on shorthand chances?
Why? 1 D-man is fine as long as you have a D-man that knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I would say it's execution, not even, like your power play, you want it to be your best guys. Well, when your best guys aren't executing, you have to change things up. But when you change things up and this execution still isn't there, you can only execute with the guys that are on your roster. And you've got to sometimes just let them get through it and play through it. So we'll see how that continues to go. So Mike Professional says, back to the topic of trades. Oh, Dom, your favorite. Do you see Boston making a bigger splash or smaller moves around the edges of the roster? It all comes down to what's available.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what's available, and I don't know other than JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. So, will they talk to Vancouver? I'm sure they will, or they probably already have. Will they pull it off? I don't know. So, I don't know any other name that's available. So I can't say one way or another.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a matter of figuring out who's actually available. I know a lot of people were talking about Frank Vetrano and what, his potential availability and that sort of thing. But the extension in did you see his interview when he signed? He did not want to leave Anaheim. There was no way he was leaving Anaheim. So, he's officially off the trade board, even with his contract. Some people have said Brock Nelson. I've heard, Provorov, Zibanejad's name. I've heard some names out there, but nothing but it's all speculative. And even if you look at the player's situation and go, it makes sense that player gets dealt. Ivan Provorov makes sense to be dealt, but not to Boston. Would that be a splash? Yeah, because you're changing up your D. Let's see. The power play right now is all mental. They just have no confidence that they can get the job done. That's a huge part of it.
And it affects the rest of their game. Yep. When they get down a goal, it's basically over. Because they know the power play isn't going to bail them out.
Yep. David, if you're asking about Ryan O'Reilly in Nashville, they have already come out and said, well, he doesn't have a no trade clause. They are treating him like he does, so he has to approve any deal. They've already squashed that they're not shopping him. Michael says, hypothetically, Frederick could go to St. Louis and in return to St. Louis. Hypothetically, Michael, if you're St. Louis, why pay a price for him at the trade deadline if you can sign him for free in the offseason? And Johnny says, Taylor Hall retained. Well, now you're paying extra to get retainment on a player that isn't the same as he was when he was last year in Boston. So I don't think Taylor Hall would bring back what you think you would be getting. I don't know about you, Dom. I've seen a few of his games, but it's just not the same.
It's not. And Look, this team is not in a position to add at this point. It is not.
No. Oh,
If a hockey trade comes along, yeah, then Sweeney has to look at it. But
right.
this team is not in a position to go shopping and looking to add. They're far from it.
No, I think the if you're thinking in terms of let's add, and I'm using air quotes around let's add, then the target guy you're looking for is a guy who's a restricted free agent with or without arb rights from another team. Chances are with someone who you've got a bit of NHL tape on, and you've been able to sit there and go, we like his game. We think we can turn him around. There's something that's not clicking in his current organization. And you know what? You kind of made that move already when you picked up Wallstrom off of waivers. So that's the type of player that they'd be looking for, because he comes in with some control, or maybe there's a year left on the contract. But, you know, with that type of ad, yeah, you're quote unquote adding because you have a little bit of term to work with there. Matrix says Zegras, but laughs about it. No, I don't want Trevor Zegras. Good question from Brian though. Can trades be made when the Four Nations
Wait,
Cup is
go
going
back
on?
to go back to his first comment.
Okay.
I was trying to
I
bring
didn't even
that up.
realize it was the same person. First off, good evening. Could care less about Four Nations Cup, and then asked if trades can be made when the cup is being played. So you care enough to ask, huh, Brian?
Maybe you don't care, Brian, but I'll tell you this is big internationally, and it's big in Canada. I don't know what it's like in the United States, but there are people that do care.
It's
So
big because it's best on best. It's big,
yeah,
and
it's the
it's big in the
first.
National Hockey League.
It's the first best on best competition since 2016. As for your second question, I don't believe there is a roster freeze during the Four Nations. No.
I haven't heard of one, no, but I feel like no one's going to be traded during it. You'll probably see some stuff done right before it, and then shortly thereafter, after they get back. I'd rather see them bring up from within and see what you have for next season. We'll see. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of those guys cycled in. I would love to see John Farinacci. We'll talk about more of him tomorrow. So no retooling and no adding is what I hear from y'all. Stand pat and wait for everyone to gel while getting older. That's not at all what we said.
No. What we're saying is this team cannot go out as it is right now and looking to trade to add. They're just not that type of team to be spending assets to go out and make additions to. If somebody comes calling and says, okay, Trent Frederick, will you trade him? Yeah, make us an offer. That's a different story. That's not saying don't retool, don't sell. What I am saying is don't go spend your first round draft pick to try and add to this team. Don't go spend your second round draft pick to try and add to this team, because as it is right now, it's not going anywhere.
Right. Now, again, in a negotiation, if you're bringing in a piece that calls for attaching a second round pick to someone, but that person's going to be here for a long term, a la a Hampus Lindholm type situation, that's a different negotiation. That's a different conversation. But those guys aren't being shopped right now. They're just not. No, Johnny, he didn't say don't acquire a first or a second. That's not at all what we said. What is being said is to start figuring it out in the offseason. Not entirely, Kevin. Again,
but mostly true.
Yeah,
like I said,
that's closer.
If somebody calls you, if I'm Don Sweeney and somebody calls me about Trent Frederick, I'm listening. If somebody
100%.
calls me and asks me about Brad Marchand, I'm listening. If somebody calls me and asks me about David Pasternak, I'm listening. And if the right offer comes across my desk, I will pull the trigger and make the trade. What I am not looking to do is call another GM and say, look, I need a right winger to fix My roster. Will
my
you
second line.
will you give me Jason Zucker for a first round pick? I'm not looking to do that if I'm Don Sweeney, because this roster is not worth investing in to that level.
Right. Now, when you hear, hey, there's a rift between Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, and the team is considering making moves on them, that's when you pick up the phone and you say, hey, is this true that you're considering potentially moving on from one of them? Oh, it is true. Great. What kind of price package did you have in mind for something like that? I'm not sure I'm looking to pull the trigger, but I want to know where your ballpark is. Like that's what GMs are supposed to do.
Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, because I've already stated sell who's not coming back at the deadline and those who won't fit in. We are just after the 8 o'clock hour here. So as Bob says, agree with Dom. If the price is right, don't be active buyers. This team is not contending as currently constructed. Game versus Panthers, 88 had 25 minutes in time on ice, 88 more or less. Play him more or less. God help if he gets injured. And then Brian wants to know, why is Poitras still in the minors? Thanks, Brian. Tune into tomorrow's show where we talk about all the prospects right here, same channel. Check that notification box right there. You can actually go and notify yourself for when we go live tomorrow because the link is already up. We are going to go through all of the prospects. Again, it is just after 8 o'clock here. So I want to thank our friends again over at Ice Shaker. Check them out, iceshaker.com, and pick up your own ice shaker. These shaker bottles are awesome. Genuinely, this thing, I filled it up this morning and it's still fucking ice cold. So, you know, they'll hold ice for over 30 hours. So I want to thank them as well. Ben adds in 6 draft picks from CHL in last 7 drafts. Time to look there a bit more than U.S. college or junior. Great question for tomorrow's show, right, Dom?
Yes. Mark it down.
So, Ben, Brian, I will jot these questions down, and I promise you we will answer them tomorrow. Be here 6:30, same channel that you're on right now, and we will talk about those.
Yes, and we got some highlights.
And we got some highlights too, so we'll go through that.
That we're allowed to use.
Yes, actual video that we have permission to use. With that, Dom.